but I think we got to get to your initial reactions because you are clearly sour about this movie. I felt, and I do still feel similarly to you. We left the theater. We were driving next to each other because we took separate cars. I rolled the window down. I looked at you and I said, I don't think I liked it. I don't think I liked it. And then you just said, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And that's okay. But reflecting on it, I sobered up after these last 2 days. I listened to James Mangold actually talk about this film. And the idea of like Steven Spielberg, what would he think of the Dial of Destiny? I kind of disagree with you in a couple of ways. I think this movie is actually more loyal to Indiana Jones than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And we're going to get to the Indiana Jones rankings later on. I don't think that's a controversial take based on the audience reception here. But expectations going on beside Cannes, what were you hoping to see out of Indiana Jones 5?
Yeah, I'll kind of go in with my expectations. I think they nailed the nostalgia. So that's not what I meant when I made that script comment. I just meant structurally with the plot. But no, overall, like expectations, I think it goes back to the Kingdom of Crystal Skull. I was expecting a better movie than Kingdom of Crystal Skull, much better, like miles better. Even though I do, like I said, I've come around on the Crystal Skull a little bit upon my rewatch a couple weeks ago, but my expectations were, all right, let's see a entertaining movie. All right, we saw the de-aging. Let's see how it goes. I actually had like pretty high expectations with the de-aging after seeing that initial trailer that we talked about, and I just wanted to be entertained and have a good send-off for Indiana Jones. And I could pretty confidently say most of those happened. Most of what I just said happened. But I think there's some big gaps here between my expectations and then what actually happened. And that's where the movie kind of like I have a little sour taste in my mouth from it. Clearly, you could tell by my tone. But overall, like this movie wasn't bad. Like I would recommend people see this movie. I guess I just had higher expectations. I guess I don't know. I don't think I did, but should I have expected this movie to be better than Crystal Skull? Maybe you think it is. Maybe I do too. I'm just saying. Do you like what were your expectations?
So when this movie was first announced, I remember a couple of years ago, and it got delayed. And I think it was actually not due to COVID. It was just delayed because Harrison Ford's injury offset. I was not excited for it. But then more and more details came out, right? James Mangold coming aboard to direct, and then Top Gun Maverick happened. And the idea of like a legacy sequel, like being that successful, had me excited to see Harrison Ford come back. I don't think they even should have made Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I didn't think necessarily this movie was necessary either, but it's just the climate we live in, the franchise world that we are surrounded by. I was growing anticipation until I was kind of waned by those critic reviews. That kind of threw me off a little bit. But I just really cared about Harrison Ford. Like, I don't even care that much about the supporting characters. I don't care too much about Phoebe Waller-Bridge. No disrespect to her. I know she's amazing in Fleabag. We'll get to her performance here. But I wanted to see, does Harrison Ford still have it? I remember blogging about this movie, Ricky, and when it came out that, he's going to, like, Harrison Ford's going to be 80 years old when Indiana Jones 5 comes out. I remember typing jokes that if he got punched once, he was going to turn into a cloud of dust. And the action sequences weren't terrible here. And we're going to get to the CGI, the de-aging, which I think was mostly successful. But did it live up to my full expectations? No. But did it honor that nostalgia of what Indiana Jones fans want and love? I would say for the most part, yes. So let's get to the synopsis. We'll get to, right, James Mangold, his adaptation coming from Steven Spielberg, who directed the first 4 films. Synopsis reads, Daredevil archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary dial that could change the course of history. Accompanied by his goddaughter, he soon finds himself squaring off against Jürgen Voller, a former Nazi who works for NASA. Okay, Ricky Flex, we talked about this movie holding up a legacy, potentially. What did it do right in terms of holding up what we saw in the previous 4 films?
Definitely the nostalgia factors. It hit home through everything that we've seen with Indiana Jones. It even did like a nice bit with synonym with snakes, a little bit, no spoilers yet. So definitely at home with the nostalgia. I think the action sequences, the set pieces in the first half of the movie into the second, maybe through the end of the second act a little bit. Very entertaining. Yes, CGI digitized a little bit too much, in my opinion, but overall, like, pretty damn good. Like, I thought it was pretty good to start. A pretty good start. What else was good? I think it was a decent send-off for Harrison Ford, like the final scene with him. It was decent. It was good enough. I was fine with it. And I think overall, this is a pretty good Indiana Jones, like the character development in this movie compared to other ones. More vulnerable, more open, that open realization. I think overall, Indiana Jones, yes, like I prefer the other Indiana Jones, the younger ones that we've seen, but I think overall, like we actually saw some character arc in this movie a little bit that we haven't seen in other ones. So overall, like I think those are probably like the headline positives coming out of the movie for me.
Yeah. So in terms of what Indiana Jones has done and then executes in this movie, like in what I really do think, if you're an Indiana Jones fan, you are going to enjoy this movie. If you don't care about Indiana Jones, you're going to roll your eyes at some aspects of this movie. But in terms of like what Indiana Jones is known for, right? It's got the bumbling assistant, right? Toby Jones here. You have the kid that's along for the ride. I think the movie actually like comes to a fault when it comes to the kid coming along for the ride, similar to like Temple of Doom with Short Round, Ki-Wai Kwan having this performer here. I actually don't think the kid did a bad job at all. I think he was an okay actor. It just came to like some of the, like, why is he there in the first place? It felt like you're just doing it because that's what happens with Indiana Jones movies. You have the Nazis here, the chase scenes. Not a lot of like hand-to-hand combat, but you got like the cat and mouse and Indy, like escaping situations, like what you expect from an Indiana Jones film. And then the John Williams score. John Williams score, heavy in the beginning of the movie. I wish they kept along with it as we kept with the movie. I think it actually subsided and it went away for a little bit. And I want you to add something here because I listened to James Mangold actually talk about the John Williams score, and he made a very strategic decision. But what were you going to say?
I think I had the same thoughts. And I think it's because, like I mentioned, the set pieces, the action sequences in the first half of the movie, and they were pretty successful when the score came along and hit at the right times. But there were less of those chase scenes in the back half of the movie. And the action sequences we did get, it didn't have any pizzazz to it, any like
no violence. It's a lot of just like people hopping on different cars. People are like bumbling and like stumbling different ways. It wasn't like an Indy like throws a haymaker to the right and then we keep going, you know?
Yeah, it just wasn't. And again, you can't do it because he's 80 years old and they try to get Wombat, Phoebe Waller-Bridge to do some of this stunt work, which again, not easy stunt work. Okay. So I'm not saying like, oh, they got to add more of it. I'm just saying it could have been definitely executed better. And I think that's why in the back half of the movie, when we saw less of those scenes, I'm not saying I want one big chase scene. That's not what I'm saying. They could have done different things to still complement a John Williams score when it's his last freaking movie he's ever doing, you know? And I think they could have executed that much better and kind of like showed appreciation. Again, this is Indiana Jones, one of the greatest scores of all time. Like, I think you definitely could have used that more to your advantage because, again, this movie was really long, a 2.5 hour movie, 2 hours, 34 minutes, way too long of a movie. And to kind of in the back half of the movie, to kind of falter like that, dare I say boring at times.
Oh yeah.
It really needed a score to kind of bring us back up. Cause I'll tell you this, I felt my eyes drooping down sometimes in the theater in the back half of the movie.
Yeah, I felt like elbowing you a couple times because I couldn't tell if like you were nodding off for a second. But I was like, I drank a couple cups of coffee before. I knew we were in for a 2.5 hour movie. It felt 2.5 hours. It was a long slog. You know, there was times where those action sequences, there's two that happen in the first 45 minutes of the movie that I thought were great, right? But you really miss those in the second half of the film. And when it comes to like James Mangold, some of the decision making that he was conscious about during this film and the interview I was listening to, he didn't want to overuse the score in the modern day, in their modern day, 1969. He thought that score was more well suited for the first three Indiana Jones films. And I think he was very conscious of what happened with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where Indy felt very out of place doing the same thing in the 1950s. So he didn't want to lean on what happened in the first three films, okay, particularly the score. He doesn't want to carry that over to 1969. I don't agree with that. Because This is Indiana Jones 5, second legacy sequel. You want to feed us some things. Okay. So in terms of decision making there, didn't exactly love it. Having like that kid involved for the entirety of the movie, didn't love that either. Okay. So as much as I respect James Mangold, I think he was the right man to pick for this job. Looks great on paper, especially what he did with like an iconic character like Logan, right?
Right.
Wolverine, and like telling this aging story of this iconic figure. He is the most well-suited man for that job. So I'm not going to disrespect him in that way, but I think he wanted to do something different than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And he makes kind of a, I would say, controversial decision, because what is the most iconic thing when you think of Indiana Jones aside from Harrison Ford? It's the goddamn score.
You know? I completely agree with you. And I think to shift to the kid, because I haven't made my comments yet, I do think he was a good actor. For a kid actor, we always talk about how hard it is to cast a good kid actor. He was good. Teddy was his character's name. But there is no reason whatsoever to bring him outside of Morocco, Tangier.
Exactly. 100%.
There's no reason whatsoever. Makes zero sense. I remember when they go to Greece after Tangier, and he's still with them. And I remember I was going to say something to you, but I was like, okay. You elbowed me, and you're like, why is the kid here? It was so
like,
random.
Is he that integral for the success of Helena that he has to be there? Like, what is going on? Is this basically like her son? You know, that's what it felt like. Like, it was her responsibility to carry him everywhere.
And then again, no spoilers, but the ending too, absurd, absolutely absurd with that character. Mm-hmm. So all in all, like, I thought he was fine. Like, I think a lot of these performances, I am fine with all the actors. I think all of them did well. Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the kid, Mads Mikkelsen. I just think the writing. That's why I mentioned the Spielberg. I don't think he really looked at the script and like, besides the nostalgia factors, it just made no sense towards the back half of the movie. It really didn't.
And I will say, what does work about the script is the writing of the Harrison Ford character of Indiana Jones. I think the pairing of the writing for his character and the performance went so well hand in hand. One of my nerves going into this movie, what I was like really like, I was frightened of, is how is Harrison Ford going to look at 80 years old playing Indiana Jones? In terms of like what we see with grizzled, iconic actors returning to a role, like, I think he nailed it, to be honest. Like, him, it felt like, even though we only have seen, right, 4 movies from this guy, based on his performance here, I felt like we've known him his entire life, to be honest. And I totally forgot, like, the relationship between him and his son, Mutt, Shia LaBeouf, addressed here. His relationship with Marion, also addressed here, right? The pain that he's gone through. And I think the setting actually went well with the character, more so than like the 1950s with Crystal Skull. Because it's like, I was listening to Mangold talk about this, and he's saying the 50 setting didn't work, but 69, it goes with the theme of the movie of time, looking back, right? Reflecting and then moving forward, right? So we have this time in history, space race. We've just landed on the moon. There's this huge celebration. And what is Harrison Ford doing? He's not celebrating as Indiana Jones. He feels like he's held back. He's reflecting on all the terrible things that's happened to him. And he goes on some amazing, actually, monologues in this movie. There's one specifically I want to talk about later. But I think it also plays into what happens in the third act of this movie, him basically being forced to move forward in this new age. I think the 1969 setting works pretty well here, and also provides some pretty good action sequences in that 1969 parade when the astronauts come home.
Yeah, I'll give Mangold credit for this for sure. 1969 Moon Day, very smart to pick this era, because if you look at the previous Harrison Ford movies, like if you think of Raiders of the Lost Ark, like the first scene we get with Harrison Ford, he's behind the desk. The girls are drooling over him. The eyelids saying "I love you" from that one girl in the front row. Like, these people want to learn history, and they want to hear from Harrison Ford or Indiana Jones, the Professor Jones. Now it's like, no one cares about the past. No one cares about archaeology. You see it in the classroom. No one cares about the siege of Syracuse. Everyone's just is focused on the future and Moon Day and landing on the moon. And are we going to Mars next? Like they mentioned in the hotel room to Mads Mikkelsen, what's next? Mars. Like, everyone's thinking what's next, not, oh, let's think about the siege of Syracuse, or let's think about the Ark of the Covenant. or the Holy Grail. No. Let's
He's
think
stuck
about
in
what's
the past. Yes.
right. And I think him retiring, that all worked, I think, to a T in this movie. So I'll give James Mangold a lot of credit for picking this setting.
Yeah, you really felt the pain and the guilt like through Harrison Ford's performance. I can't disrespect him like that, but he also does what the Harrison Ford actor at the age of like 70 to 80 is so good at. It's just being a grumpy old man. Nails it. It's just like that comes with like this late stage Harrison Ford. But I want to talk about another performer here, the female lead, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Someone that's a newcomer to the franchise, obviously. Indiana Jones's goddaughter and the daughter of Toby Jones's character in this film. I want to get your reactions to her performance here, right? Someone like is obviously known for Fleabag, not known for the franchise realm or being a part of action films, but James Mangold was really adamant when he wrote this character that Phoebe Waller-Bridge has to play her. Do you think she was a good addition to the Indiana Jones franchise?
She was really good, I think, as a performer. Really good actress. Really good banter with Harrison Ford. An older presence, still being able to whip up that chemistry. I think good for both of them. I think overall her character works. I just think, for me, again, not against the actress, I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge is very talented and did a very good job. I just think it was a little too much being an a-hole here. Just being like, she's clearly smart, witty, clever, similar to Indy, right? But they just leaned way into just us just not to like her. They went way too deep.
And too deep in the movie too. Like it was like 3/4 through. Like I still don't like her. Am I supposed to?
Yeah, she hasn't made a turn whatsoever. And even like whatever, that she's a good guy, a good person. She doesn't turn. But like, even when she does like kind of change her morals, it's like you still don't really like buy into her. Like you still don't say, "Oh, I want her to lead this franchise going forward." Like I do not want her leading the franchise or being like a Indiana Jones. I don't know how you would call it then, like wombat. Like I don't know. I would not want her as like taking the mantle of the hat. And I think they really wanted to sell you on that here. And I think if they wanted to do that, they wouldn't have done what they did, like make her so unlikable. And I think, yes, the point of her character is to be unlikable, but they went way too deep. And it was I think for me, it just buzzed me out so hard sometimes. And it was ridiculous.
This performance by Phoebe Waller-Bridge actually made me appreciate Harrison Ford's performance as Indiana Jones through these 5 movies, because what she can do is only half of what is necessary for the type of role when you were playing the quote unquote successor to Indiana Jones. You have to be able to like present the brains, but also have the athletic ability. She has the brains, but she cannot pull off the stunts and athletic ability. It's like, to me, miscast in that regard. That's why I was like, why are you so hell-bent on this person who is the star of a comedy, has never shown any like action adventure prowess on her resume? And I think Harrison Ford at 80 years old ran better than Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I feel like if they ran a 40 against one another, Harrison Ford beats her by half a second right now.
My honestly. God, doctor.
Dude, you can't tell me you watch this movie and you're like, this person is going to be a future action star.
She should not. I think she should not be an action star.
And that's why it's like you can't have her be a successor to the franchise. But what I'm thinking is they don't plan on making a spinoff with her. I think it's really one and done. And it's not, I don't think they cast her saying this person is good enough to lead the next Indiana Jones tale. I don't think that's what they intended because of what happened with Crystal Skull and Shia LaBeouf. They watched what happened with that character. They watched it fall by the wayside, him kind of crash and burn in that movie. And then after that, there was no talks to, even with the like critical reception, decent for that movie. Audience did not respond well to it. There was no talk about him becoming the next Indiana Jones. Flash forward to like these last 5 years. Who are people talking about as the successor to Harrison Ford? Chris Pratt. That ain't going to happen. That ain't going to happen. And that's why I think we got a second legacy sequel. They had to make one more Indiana Jones movie, and they didn't want to pick someone else to lead the movie. And they wanted to do it before Harrison Ford. It gets too old or he's gone. So that's why I think they were just like, we need someone that can kind of supplant, be here, give off that good banter, can have that good chemistry with Harrison Ford, but not lead the rest of the franchise. In that regard, decent casting, but I just didn't buy the athletic ability.
That's a good point. I didn't even like think about that. You're so right on that. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, too, like now I'm thinking about Crystal Skull when they hand or Shia takes the hat for a second before he puts it on, then Harrison Ford takes it away.
She gives it back in this movie. She like hands him the hat.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it was the exact opposite where like she hands it back. I think that's saying, yeah, you know what? This is a one-time thing for her.
Yep.
And I think to your point too, this is why they kind of made this another legacy sequel is one, money. Two,
When is the next time we're gonna see Indiana Jones movie? Right?
yeah, right. Like two, like they probably didn't want to recast anyone, but they had to utilize this IP and take advantage of it. So like, oh, let's just make a movie. And then officially three, get a good send off for Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones. Get a proper send off. And was it perfect? No, we'll get to it. But it was good enough. And I think now, because you did this one, it covers your bases and it buys you a lot of time. You don't have to make a Indiana Jones movie with a new person within the next 10 years. You honestly don't have to ever again. Really. You really don't now that you did this. But will they probably? Yes.
15 years. Like 15 years since the fourth one, 15 years since the fifth. Let it sit. Then if there's a clamoring for it, then we recast. Or we get Harrison Ford at 95.
No.
I don't mean to crap on Phoebe Waller-Bridge, right? As like not an action star. Like I think she has a lot of potential. She's going to be great in everything like after this. I did love like some of her decisions in the third act. But they do an interesting thing where Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. They do like a reversal of what you usually see in the films where he's the one that needs to be saved. And I'm like, this girl's going to save her alongside this kid. Like, I know I have to suspend a little bit of disbelief or suspend a little bit of belief for Indiana Jones. Not too much, though. And it gets a little crazier after that.
Definitely.
What I do want to talk about, though, is another critical point of this movie that people were talking about leading in. And it came about in the trailers. It's the de-aging. The de-aging of this film, Harrison Ford, it looked really good in the trailers. And I just want to start off by saying this was my favorite sequence of the movie. It was the first 20 minutes. We had de-aging for way longer of a period of time than I expected. I thought it was going to be a nice, quick 5 minutes in and out. All right, just give us a glimpse of the old Indy, but it goes through 20 minutes. Was the de-aging perfect? No. And we'll talk about that like after I hear your thoughts. But it was the best action sequence of the movie. And it was pure Raiders of the Lost Ark, Last Crusade type of sequence. And it really got me jacked up watching it. And I was really sad because I knew we were going to have to flash forward to 80-year-old Harrison Ford. And I'm like, oh, what could have been? What was, like really like harping back on like the good old days. But I love this sequence, him against the Nazis. Ricky, what were your thoughts on the de-aging in the first 20?
This is the best de-aging technology we've had so far in Hollywood. Really, I think Rogue One, that's like the best that we've gotten on an individual basis. But there's not like an action. It's the Admiral. Like, there's no action. Like there's nothing going on.
Except Grand Moff Tarkin, not the best look. That like him like being like him having died and then like bringing him back.
Yeah,
great. That's bad.
Yeah. But like just based off of the technology, not bad. And flash forward here, we're actually getting some movements, right? We're getting an actions piece. And now that I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking of the actions piece and set sequence in Tangier. I'm thinking of New York. I think Tangier was good, but just a little repetitive and a little too long. I think New York was good, but a little too digitized a little bit in New York. Didn't love that.
With the red, white, and blue like streamers falling down. It did feel a little bit computerized. I agree.
Yeah, it did. And it wasn't pure, even though we had Harrison Ford actually doing like on the horse and everything, Boyd Holbrook chasing him down.
Love that.
But then we get this, the de-aging one. This just felt like old Indiana Jones, and that's why you were absolutely right. It was the best action piece in the movie, and that's crazy to say that because if you said that there was going to actually be an action piece with the de-aging technology going in, I would have been like, no, it's probably just like him, like in the beginning of the movie, no spoilers. Then he escapes somehow, or someone helps him out. That's it. but they actually like did a whole train sequence. It was really good. And yes, some of some things didn't fit. Like when when Harrison Ford was talking, sometimes like the mouth wasn't lining up with the words and some other things like that. But overall, it's just very impressive that they were able to go to this great lengths to make it work. So overall, like it's not perfect, but to this extent, I can't think of a better de-aging technology in movies to date.
I was pleasantly surprised with the length of it. You had to really like look at Harrison Ford in the eye, like from your seat to tell that it was like not him. Uh, it was the eyes that really told you. Like everything else looked decent, looked like just a fresh cut face of Harrison Ford, freshly shaven. But it was just those eyes. They look a little bit beady, like he's been taking drugs or
It was
something.
like The Irishman, same thing.
I'm just like he's on drugs or it's whatever de-aging. But there's also a moment where he's like hopping on the train and it just didn't look like a human. And I was just like, that should look real. like there's like that should not be a computer. Like someone should be hopping that goddamn train. This is Indiana Jones. Someone's hopping that.
It was so weird how they made it a
He was
little
like leaping. It was so weird. It was
yeah,
like, he was like
I had a
track
note
star.
here. It's like they couldn't find a stuntman to do it, so instead they kept the de-aging technology and just put a shadow on it and then zoomed out.
Exactly what I'm talking about.
It was like, what? Like, just get someone to do it and put a shadow over them, like any other normal stuntman. You know, very odd choice to do that. But overall, like this it was like 20 minutes in the opening movie. This set piece, right? And it was almost totally unnecessary, really, for the plot.
The whole movie is unnecessary.
Not wrong.
No,
but
it's franchise. We get it.
Franchise. But it was still, I think, even we said the cons. I still think it was like, I don't know, for us focusing on the nostalgia here, that is what the best part of the movie was.
And
really.
James Mangold, I think, knew we were never going to get another action sequence like that with an 80-year-old Harrison Ford. So we had to put it at the beginning and give those fans, like you're talking about it, maybe an overleniency on nostalgia in this movie, perfectly equated with this scene, but also ties into the story, his relationship with Toby Jones's character, right? Introduces Mads Mikkelsen. Mads Mikkelsen, I thought his de-aging looked okay. Like to me, it was just like, you didn't have to de-age Mads Mikkelsen. Like, it's just like, he's young enough, like compared to like the age that he grows to. I feel like you just like put on a little bit extra makeup. He can pull off the character that like he is in 1969. Like, I didn't think they had to do that.
I didn't know they de-aged him.
I thought they did a little bit. Sometimes it's hard to tell. You know, sometimes it's like
almost
like when Nick Fury,
I thought they just like
de-aged a little bit.
Yeah.
And like Secret Invasion. I'm like, did they have to do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't think they de-aged him at all, but maybe I don't know.
Be wrong.
But Matt, like, did you like? I think Mads Mikkelsen, I thought he was good, but he just does this all the time.
That's what I felt. Like, I was just like, he's good. I can't say he's exceptional because like I've seen the exceptional with Casino Royale. I don't think it's reaching that level. He was dark. He was ominous. He seemed like he was smart, very aware of like his surroundings and like very knowledgeable. He was good, but I thought Harrison Ford was the best performer in this movie. I honestly thought that.
I would agree.
Which is sometimes like out of an 80-year-old Indiana Jones, it's kind of amazing that we're just clearly, yes, he was the guy.
Yeah, I think if they put, again, this was already 2.5 hours, but if they reallocated some time to Mads Mikkelsen, I know it's Indiana Jones. They normally don't do that with the villainous characters, allocate too much time to them. But if they actually, similar to, I don't know, Skyfall or something like that, like now we're going James Bond realm, they give actually ample time to the villain in this movie. I think Mads Mikkelsen could have stolen the show, but they didn't do that. So it was kind of just like going through the motions, which was fine because the motions are higher standard than most because it's Mads Mikkelsen. But at the end of the day, it's just like he can't elevate his performance because of what he has to work with,
Exactly. And just doesn't come with like Indiana Jones franchise. We love that we get Mads Mikkelsen as the villain, but we should know based on the previous 4 movies, he's not going to get ample screen time. It's not really about him whatsoever. Okay. I also, before we go into spoilers here, maybe, is this a spoiler if we talk about the MacGuffin? Like what it does? Yeah.
I would just go to the spoilers.
So let's just hit our scores right now. Then we'll jump to because I like the spoilers. I just want to cover the ending and I want to talk about the MacGuffin a little bit because I loved it. I actually like the idea of what it did. But what, in terms of score, do you give the Dial of Destiny?
57.
Okay. I'm a 61. I'm 61. I left the theater and I was just like, this is a 51. Like, this is like not sitting well with me. Then after I listened like some of the decision making from James Mangold, like how much it means to him, I'm like,
He got you.
man, he did. And I shouldn't have done that. Like I shouldn't have done that, but I do feel like I was more prepared for this podcast as a result of it.
But let me before we go to spoilers, let me say this. I was also thinking actually 40s. I was thinking in the 40s.
So you sobered up too.
So I yes, but
someone gave you a water.
But this is what I was thinking now a couple days later. One, I think the movie's worse than I actually thought walking out of the theater. So it's like
worse now.
Well, so hold on. Like I was hold on. I'll explain. As in like the plot and just structurally, like it just what the heck. But overall, it's Indiana Jones, and you think about all the absurd things in the franchise, that have happened. If you just think back, this one was way too absurd plot-wise. But again, just what happens naturally or happens. Also absurd in other movies, just what happens.
Especially the third act. Like usually
so
something absolutely bananas happens.
Yes. So yeah, that I can't punish it as much as I wanted to because it gave us the nostalgia. And you know what? Indiana Jones, yes, we like to see in the first three movies were so grounded. They're so important in Hollywood because of all the technical pieces from Spielberg. This one was the exact, it did not feel like that way at all, but you got to like respect it a little bit because it did hold true to Indiana Jones besides that digitized factor.
Yes. In terms of suspending belief, in terms of like buying something, it's a part of like the indie, like what comes with like the lore. The third act, usually something crazy happens, could be like something that's in like religion and then like or aliens, like something crazy could happen, but you don't expect it in action sequences. You love the practicality of the action sequences in Indiana Jones. And that's where I think this movie kind of failed a little bit, especially with one specific decision. But that's going to do it for a spoiler-free section